In this Thymesia Beginner Guide, we're going to take a look at how the upcoming Soulslike Action RPG works in terms of its gameplay mechanics, tips and tricks to come out alive in combat, and more. Thymesia is the first game developed by OverBorder Studio and is set in the dreaded Hermes Kingdom, where experimentations on the people affected by the plague have run rampant. Here you play as Corvus, a plague doctor in search of his identity, as he attempts to understand the new state of the world around him. If you're searching for optimal ways to thrive and succeed in Thymesia, then this guide is for you. In Thymesia, there is no character creation like in Bloodborne, where you get to design Corvus from scratch in terms of his appearance and origin. Instead, it features a classless system which lets you decide the playstyle you will follow based on the attributes, talents, and plague weapons you invest in and upgrade. With the latter, there will be 21 weapons to choose from and try out. In this guide, I'll be focusing on the mechanics you need to master, combat tips, shards to farm for, and the best potion to use in any encounter. Knowing the right talents to invest in will also help make your playthrough more manageable. First up is how to constantly wound your enemies. In Thymesia, there are two bars that you'll need to consider in combat corresponding to the enemy's wounds, or their white bar, and health, or their green bar. Wounds act like armor in the sense that this is the first line of defense. Depleting it effectively allows you to target their HP, eventually leading them to be dazed and letting you execute them after that. To be able to deplete wounds effectively, you'll need to perform normal or saber attacks and throw feathers as part of your Raven form. But it can heal over time, so you should also invest in talents to slow down the process of recovery and to further improve wound damage. For saber attacks, be sure to invest in strength and remember to at least unlock the sharp weapons level 1 talent to boost damage. For feathers, at earlier levels, you ought to prioritize gaining access to full winged level 2. Carrying additional feathers ensures that you have a steady supply of ranged attacks, which also means that you will no longer need to invest in growing feathers level 2 and level 3 to replenish them a bit faster. In major boss encounters, however, you'll need to unlearn a couple of other talents just so you can allocate them to plague wounds level 2 and level 3. These are potent since it lengthens the period before wounds can heal, so you won't have to rush into combat just to haphazardly damage the boss's HP. In relation to using the feathers to lower the enemy's armor rating, it also has a greater function. Since you cannot parry critical attacks, which are indicated by a glowing green aura, the ideal way to protect yourself is by dodging, followed by throwing feathers at them. The latter action is incredibly important because you not only interrupt their attacks, but also briefly incapacitate them. This is the perfect window to then hit your targets hard using heavy or claw attacks, coupled with plague weapons. Mastering the dodge and throw combo early on in the game encourages you to invest in strength and plague more every time Corvus levels up, because you eventually won't have to rely on vitality anymore. One of the things that makes Thymesia shine in encounters is how responsive the enemy AIs are. Attacking them repeatedly will result in retaliation, which can lead to your death if you're caught unprepared. Because of this, it is ideal to invest in the following talents to slow down their counterattack gauge. Deflect level 2, which is easily accessible at lower levels, Saber, Dodge and Stab level 2, and Feather Dart level 4. Saber and Feather talents may take a relatively long time to unlock, but it's worth allocating points into if you're going for a quick playstyle, because you not only efficiently gain damage to your targets, but also ensure that they will not bounce back from being incapacitated. If you've not gained access to the Plague Weapon level 2 talent, then maximizing Reave is the best option. Reave is triggered when you execute Predator's Claw by holding the right trigger button if you're using an Xbox controller. It's also important to invest in Predator's Claw level 2 to receive the super armor buff, because during this time you're vulnerable to receiving damage as you momentarily draw energy in one place to greatly harm the target. What Reave does is it steals their signature move to weaponize it yourself and use this against them. You can opt to use it against dazed enemies, that is those who are ripe for execution, or by first maintaining a safe distance between the two of you to avoid being interrupted. Although Reave is temporary, this is especially useful if you don't have the second plague weapon slot unlocked yet, since you have an alternative to destroying your foes. Compared to Thymesia's preview back in December of last year, deflecting attacks is no longer as vital to your survival because you can technically rely on the dodge abilities and potions to be at the top of your game. But if you're utilizing a build where you incorporate Deflect with claw attacks to deal damage quicker, then practicing the right timing of doing so is essential. Similar to other Souls-like titles, it is not as simple as holding down a single button. For instance, when regular enemies start raising their weapon almost halfway, you should immediately halt your current action to trigger Deflect because you need at least a second to be in the proper stance. But it is not all grim when you're trying to master this move, since you can invest in a series of defense talents to reduce the damage you take. Reaching defense level 3 not only lowers damage received by more than 50%, but also takes critical attacks into account, which is huge since this guarantees that you will not perish from it. In Thymesia, you unlock a total of 3 types of potions as you progress. You start with the general potion to instantly recover 100% of lost HP and energy, followed by long-lasting potion, which will regain these stats over time. And finally, you have Fast Acting Potion to boost the number of potions you can carry, but at the cost of instantly recovering only half of your HP and energy. Among these three, it's going to be much more beneficial for you to select and constantly upgrade the long-lasting potion due to the longer recovery perk. What happens is you can activate this as you are engaged in combat. While the potion is active, you continually gain HP and energy over time, letting you focus on dealing massive damage in rapid succession rather than having to repeatedly dodge and deflect attacks. As a result, you're able to put your targets down faster while staying alive. Since you do not immediately gain access to the long-lasting potion, you need to upgrade the general potion enough to sustain Corvus temporarily. You can invest in raising health recovery as well as the number of potions you can carry. Once you have unlocked the long-lasting potion, be sure to maximize both upgrades together with the ingredient slots. Crafting potions by adding a special ingredients makes it highly effective. For example, you can add sage to further amplify health recovery and lavender to reduce damage taken over a certain period. Remember that you need to be careful not to overinvest in general potions, since the drop rate for alchemy enhancers for upgrades is not as great. Plus, there is no way to respect them, unlike talents. There are several in-game currencies in Thymesia which we'll talk about in the next 3 tips. First are memory shards that are used for leveling up Corvus. Digging deeper, the 3 attributes in Thymesia include Strength, Vitality, and Plague. While you're understanding the gameplay mechanics, it's advisable to invest points into Vitality to survive attacks. Later on, however, you can choose to use Forgotten Feathers to respec these attributes and to focus primarily on Plague for better clawed damage and heightened energy reserves, as well as Strength to make your normal attacks more effective. Additionally, every time you level up, you receive 1 talent point. One of your goals should be to farm for memory shards to efficiently hit the max level of 25. To do this, you'll need to kill almost every enemy you see while you're starting out. One thing I want to mention, though, is that you shouldn't try and max your level in the first area of the game, which is called Sea of Trees. Ideally, what would happen is you would level up some there, and then when you reach Royal Garden and Hermes Fortress, you'll have better elite and mini-bosses to slay, which will provide you with much more memory shards. Elites are enemies with red growth jutting out of their body, while mini-bosses are those that move rapidly and deal substantial damage. Another thing that I would like to mention is that while you're out exploring defeating enemies, you should be checking every nook and cranny, destroying wooden barrels as some of them contain white and green wisps of smoke and show lore items. These activities grant collection of memories. Be sure to use them as they provide a significant amount of memory shards, thereby lessening the time it takes you to fully level up your character. The second currency to farm for is skill shards. Skill shards pave the way to unlock and upgrade plague weapons, which are extremely effective at annihilating enemies. Each plague weapon has its respective skill shards, so you cannot accumulate a general amount of this and then unlock the other kinds of weapons. Targeting elites and minor bosses who wield specific weapons is the best way to farm for this item, and killing those you see for the first time gives you skill shards. To improve the skill shard drop rate, you should consider investing in luck level 1 and level 2 under the strategy's talent tree. Remember to venture into sub-quests after unlocking them when you complete their respective main missions to make more monster types available to you. The ones I would focus on are those who wield the halberd, scythe, shield, and bow, as these are the best plague weapons in Thymesia. The plague weapons you should aim to unlock and upgrade are the ones I just mentioned because of how easy they are to use together with the perks they provide. The halberd can be unlocked in the Sea of Trees, and what this allows you to do is strike the enemy 3 times from an average distance, giving you the necessary space to quickly dodge their attacks in retaliation. On the second and third jab, both your normal attack and wound damage are boosted. The more you upgrade the halberd, the more damage it deals. Meanwhile, the scythe is another weapon that has wide and decent range, whose energy cost decreases 1 upgrade after the next. Not only do you inflict considerable attack and wound damage, but you also recover a portion of your HP, making it ideal in cases when you find yourself consuming most of your potions. Next is the shield, which helps you practice your deflections. Upon successfully doing so, you deal significant damage by executing counterattacks that may potentially stagger your target. And last but not least is the bow, which should always be equipped. Not only does this plague weapon cost much less energy to use, but it's also effective at interrupting critical attacks, so you're not limited to relying on feathers. Among these 4 weapons, the bow deals the most amount of attack and wound damage. The final tip of our Thymesia Beginner Guide is the ways to maintain plague weapon energy. There are several options to do this depending on the talents you intend to invest in. To start with, you want to invest in Saber, Healing, Execution, and Energized Weapon level 1. Claw, Energized Claws level 1 and 2, and Feather, Energized Feather level 1 and 2. These should be your focus areas since these are the 3 main actions you will always perform in the game. The other talents to consider if you're leaning towards deflecting attacks are Energized Deflect level 1 and level 2. You can also try Perfectionist or Adrenaline level 2 under strategies, depending on where your HP level usually sits. If it's constantly full, then Perfectionist is the better option, otherwise go for Adrenaline. Both of these should be supplemented with energy reflux, so that the moment you take damage, you gain some energy back. That wraps up our Thymesia Beginner guide, and I hope it helps you get through the game effectively. What are some of your guys' tips about the game? Are you guys playing Thymesia? Let us know in the comments below.